Hey mamas, so we're talking step 5. How do I help women prepare for birth? How can you do this at home? We have been going through this acronym for almost 2 months now, and we are just about wrapping up. So if you're interested in diving into step 5 of how I help my clients prepare for birth, then stick around. Hi everyone, my name is Leslie. I'm a disciple, wife, mom, and childbirth doula, and this is where I share about all things birth, faith, and family. And today I am sharing about, we are continuing the acronym. We have the HEALTH acronym as to how I help moms prep for birth. H stands for healing, E for education, A for advocacy, L for leaning on your team or loving your team. T today is for trusting God's timing. Okay, so before you click off and you're just like, yeah, okay, heard that before, I am praying that what I am sharing with you today will help some of you get set free as to like how you actually practically do this, okay? You can say, hey, I trust God. Baby's gonna come when baby comes. Like, I'm trusting the process. That's so easy to say until you're past your due date and you have people asking you, when's baby coming? And you have a provider checking in, you have additional testing to make sure you can continue waiting. And one thing after the other, you have offers for inductions or different things. And all of this, when you said you wanted to just wait, okay? So why wait? Why wait? Why is that so important? Why is this something that I talk through with my clients? Why? Because, well, one, when labor starts on its own, it's easier. It is less painful. You are less at a risk to end up in a C-section. You are at a higher risk of having a more satisfactory birth experience. All because tying to it starting on its own, it helps increase better outcomes in how your birth plays out, okay? When labor starts on its own, it is naturally less painful than how it would be if you medically induced your labor and you medically started providing yourself with the oxytocin. That is what makes you contract, okay? Now for more on that, for more on induction, I'm gonna link down below a separate video I made on your provider has recommended an induction, now what? More on that in that video. But in this video today, I want to talk to you about how to prepare to trust God's timing, okay? So one, practically speaking, is to preemptively have a conversation with your provider about what waiting looks like. What does trusting God's timing look like in your pregnancy? Are you waiting until 40 weeks? Are you going to wait until 42 weeks? What are you going to wait until? Okay? And having that conversation, seriously, especially if you're a first-time mom, having that conversation with your partner, because the thing is that statistically speaking, you are most likely to go into labor at 41 weeks at around, it says, after 41 weeks in a day is what the statistics show. So you are most likely to go past your due date if this is your first baby. And so what does that look like? Having that conversation preemptively with your partner is key. Figuring out what you guys are going to do, what you feel comfortable with, and committing that you are going to trust God's timing, and committing to each other that you're going to hold out despite the things that will undoubtedly may come up, okay? Number 2, a preemptive conversation with your provider. This is why you start talking during your prenatals about, hey, I want to wait until I go into labor naturally. How long are you comfortable with me waiting? At what point are you going to start recommending interventions or induction, right? Ask those questions. If you can, ask them before you even agree to go to this practice. But if not, ask them during your pregnancy, and ask them of every single provider that you speak of, because this way you know, okay, well, ask them of your provider. So this way you know where they stand, okay? It's most likely the same policy across the whole practice, but you want to know where they stand. So you want to talk to your provider and you want to know where they stand on this so that you can have a conversation and you can advocate, as we talked in one of the earlier videos, about what it is that you are looking for in terms of support for your birth, okay? Number 3, recommendation for how to prepare for trusting God for his timing is to avoid cervical checks before you are in actual labor. Why? You're probably like, Leslie, what does a cervical check have anything to do with trusting God's timing? Well, a cervical check, how is that going to help you? How is that information? How is knowing how far you are dilated before you are in labor going to help you? I went from 3 centimeters the morning that at 42 weeks, the day I turned 42 weeks. And within a couple of hours, within literally less than 12 hours, I was fully dilated and had a baby in my arms. And I'm pretty sure with my first, I didn't get a cervical check, and it must have been a different length. How far dilated you are before you're in actual labor doesn't actually count. It doesn't actually help with anything. It's just a piece of information that can cause you more doubt, more worry, more anxiety. I have never seen a cervical check before labor help a client, like encourage them or lift them up or absolutely anything. It has only ever felt like a deterrent or something else to create doubt that their body can actually do this, that they'll actually be able to dilate. If you're not in labor, you don't need a cervical check. It is no indication of when you will actually go into labor. So knowing how dilated you are will not actually show us at all when you're going to go into labor, and therefore it is not helpful information. So that's my third recommendation for if you really want to prepare to trust God for his timing, is to avoid cervical checks and any unnecessary interventions. For example, membrane sweeps are known to cause prodromal labor. So your provider may say, oh, well, let me just go in and do a cervical check. Would you like me to do a membrane sweep just to see if we can get things going? Well, I've seen people get membrane sweeps and then end up with painful prodromal labor, which is essentially not real labor, but painful contractions. All because they had a membrane sweep. And so, again, if we're really going to trust God's timing, then we do not need to be so focused on having these interventions, having it to try to speed things up. Okay? And I would even say, consider if you really are going to trust God's timing, avoiding or putting off induction. And there's 2 different types of induction. There's medical induction and there's natural induction methods. And I don't, natural induction methods as in like you start trying to take something to help your labors start. For example, castor oil is the number 1 natural induction method that people take. They take like a midwife's brew to start contractions, right? I will just say anecdotally, I've only seen this work for about 25% of the people that have tried it. In my experience, anecdotally speaking, I believe that it ranges, but I've only seen it successfully work at delivering a baby fully 25% of the time. I think there's something about you having to continue to take it to keep the contractions going. And sometimes the same person takes it once and then tries to take it again later, and it has a different reaction the following time. And so it is not 100% effective either. And then with medical induction, increases your risk of a C-section. And so complete and total transparency and honesty, that is what it does. Statistically speaking, inducing your labor increases your risk of a C-section, especially as a first-time mom. And then I would say the last piece, and this is the most important piece for how to prepare for really trusting God's natural timing for when you go into labor, is to lean into the Lord, is to really, you have to answer for yourself, do you trust him or not? Waiting on the Lord is, yes, you can do the things that you can naturally do, but you have to, at some point, you have to stop and trust. There's only so much you can do, and you have to do everything you can in the natural to, you can exercise, there's positions, you can be eating certain things. I know some people do raspberry leaf tea, some people do pineapple. Dates are great for pregnancy, and especially for helping for birth. There's studies that show that it helps you to have a more efficient labor. And so you could do all those things, right? But at some point you got to stop and let God do his part. And scientifically speaking, we have seen that the person who dictates when labor starts is actually the baby. The baby releases a hormone that tells the placenta, okay, birth is going to happen. And that's when labor starts. Okay. So if it's something in the baby, then we know it's something that God triggers in the baby. God triggers in that baby. Okay, it's time. Right. And then things start. That baby releases that hormone, and then the body kicks into, okay, we're going to start labor. We're going to start the oxytocin. We're going to start the contractions, right? We're going to start the prostaglandins to start opening up the cervix, okay? There are things you can do in the natural to help help naturally induce labor that don't have the same kind of, I'm taking things into control, right? Like I told you about the dates. I told you that some people have red raspberry leaf tea, but I've even seen some people are sensitive to that. So it really just depends on the person. I think I've shared this before, but intercourse helps because prostaglandins which is normally the first step to a medical induction, is them inserting prostaglandins in your cervix to help soften up the cervix to efface, to open up, to thin out so it's completely gone, is found in semen. So a natural way to get prostaglandin is to have intercourse. If you feel comfortable enough to do that, that's something you can naturally do if you really want to see how much you can start going. However, I will say that you can do all those things, but at some point you got to trust God to do his part. And if you want to hear more about a testimony on that, you should listen to my birth story, my testimony for my last child. And I have a whole series on how God, it's like a Christmas series. I'll link it down below so that you guys can see my birth story on that. But God really tested me on this piece. So I say this and I share this and I teach this to the families that I work with, because not only do I believe this to be true, I have lived it. I have done these things. I'm not recommending to you things that I haven't myself tried or I haven't myself done or seen done successfully with the families that I work with. Trusting God's timing changes the game. It really, truly does. Now, if you feel pressured to do something, if you feel pressured to act, you feel like you're on a timeline, you feel like all of a sudden you're being rushed, I want you to take a minute to do something that I teach my children. And I say, pause, pray, and ask for Holy Spirit power to do what's right in his sight. You can trust him. It's going to be all right. I know it rhymes. Children love that. But that it's true to us. Pause, pray, and ask for Holy Spirit power for you to do what's right in his sight, not your own sight. Because his sight, he sees better than we do. He sees the whole picture. He knows how it'll end if we go with the induction. And he knows how painful it'll be and the things we'll have to go through. But he also knows how it'll be if we go the natural route too. I'm not saying that God can't work through an induction. I'm not saying that God can't work through a C-section. What I'm saying is that if your pursuit is to have birth, have a natural delivery, the way that God created it to be, then trusting his timing is such an important piece to prepare for that kind of birth. Okay? And so I will leave you with that. I pray that this is encouraging to you. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. If you check out that induction video for more information on questions you can ask if induction is something that's coming up with your provider. And I pray that you will leaning into the Lord about this. God, what is your perfect timing? Can I actually trust you can you help give me peace during the end, during those times where I'm going to feel tired, I'm going to feel exhausted, I'm going to want this baby out. Lord, how are you going to help me through this? What do I prepare me mentally, spiritually, physically for what's coming? And God will prepare you, because guess what? He knows what day that baby's going to be born on, and he knows exactly how it's going to play out. And so you, with your direct connection and intimate relationship with him, like you carrying your baby, what wouldn't you do for your baby? You're carrying your child, right? What wouldn't you do for your child? How much more will a perfect father do for you? We got to trust him, trust his timing, and trust that your body will know what to do. It's that big trusting his timing and trusting your body. Okay? All right. That's it for this one. I will see you in the next one. We're just about wrapping up because we are almost done spelling the word health here. Next video will be the last in this series. And I hope you'll tune in for that one. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, be blessed. Remember, you've got this because the Lord's got you. Bye.